Started with the American Civil War. Yes, I know you are almost done, and yes, I know you probably could care less about the Civil War, but we're going to do this anyways. And we're going to see how fast I can go through some of this, and then there's going to be parts of this slideshow that I actually do skip. So just so you know, this is a 4-year war, almost to the day. So April 12th, 1861 is the Battle of Fort Sumter, and then April 9th, 1865 is the surrender of Robert E. Lee to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. So it is almost 4 years to the day. So the first part is when Fort Sumter is fired upon. That is the South fully starting the Civil War. Lincoln, like I said, was hesitant to actually give any commands to start the war. If he thought if there was going to be bloodshed, let it be from the South. He didn't want anybody to secede. He was still always hopeful that maybe the Union would come back, or the United States would come back together with some kind of political discussion. So this is a picture of Lincoln in the middle. So Lincoln's first choice of general, this is General Winfield Scott. General Winfield Scott is famous for the Indian Removal Act, from taking the Native Americans off of their land in the east and moving them to Indian Territory. He's also famous for taking Mexico City from General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. General Winfield Scott's named Old Fuss and Feathers. This is a picture of General Winfield Scott when Lincoln asked him to be his main general. And you can see that Winfield Scott is honestly, he's just too old. He can't even get on his horse. So it's not a good situation. But, you know, Lincoln kind of has to go start his way at the top of the totem pole and start working his way down. He knows that General Winfield Scott would be a good person. But like I said, he can't command people in battle anymore. It's just, he needs to retire. Then he goes to Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee is famous for being the Confederate leading general. So he will fight for the South. But Lincoln actually asked him. Robert E. Lee lives in what is considered, no, not what is considered. Robert E. Lee's home was where Arlington Cemetery is today. In fact, that house that's in Arlington Cemetery was Robert E. Lee's home. That gets taken away from him after the American Civil War. So when and if you ever go there, Arlington Cemetery is literally right next door to Washington, D.C. So Robert E. Lee goes to Lincoln. Lincoln asks him in person to be his number one general. Lee turns him down. And it's not that Lee supports secession. Lee doesn't believe the South should be leaving. The reason why most historians agree that Lee left and refused to be the Union Army leader was because he could not stand to fight against his home state of Virginia. And at this time, most Americans, some of them identify as being part of the United States of America, but it's still very much where I'm from. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Virginia. I'm from South Carolina. And it's very much a state pride. And you still see that really today, of kind of we are here, and anybody else who lives in a different state is an other. So he does not want to fight against his home state of Virginia. So Lincoln is forced to, or decides to go with George B. McClellan, called Little Mac. He's going to lead the Army of the Potomac. And the Army of the Potomac is the army that's going to literally, their main job is to protect Washington, D.C., to keep the Confederate soldiers, to keep the Confederates from encroaching upon Washington, D.C., which is in Southern Territory. So he's really, really great at training his troops. Like, people love him for that. But when number 2 bullet point says he's horrible at going in for the kill, it's literally what it means. He goes into battle, but never finishes the job. He doesn't attack. He's very cautious. He'd rather play defense. But getting troops ready, he's great at. So he's going to be dismissed from his position twice. He's going to be the guy that's going to help West Virginia get its independence from Virginia, because Virginia is made up of Virginia and West Virginia at this time period, and West Virginians don't want to be part of the South. We're going to skip Old Brains here, but that's just a fun nickname. We're also going to skip Ambrose Burnside, other than the picture of his awesome sideburns, and you can imagine where we get the term sideburns from. This guy helps make him famous. Then you have Fighting Joe Hooker, and he's going to lead the Army of the Potomac for the last 2 years, he's going to lead the Army of the Potomac for a little less than a month in 1863. Eventually, you're going to have General George Meade. He's the one who's going to lead the Army of the Potomac. That's the army, once again, that's protecting Washington, D.C. He will lead them for the final 2 years, and he's actually really good. But what happens is, in order to find Lincoln to find these Union leaders, it takes a while to see who's actually going to be good, who's going to be successful. And of course, we know we're going to have Ulysses S. Grant. He will then become a U.S. president after this. And of course, once again, it's like he has that war hero title in his background, so he's going to be easily become president. He is known for being unconditional surrender. He is willing to go the distance. He is willing to lay siege to different areas and starve people out if he needs to. He's very good soldier in that aspect. And there's like stories about him getting really drunk during these long sieges and things like that. Famous Confederate, we already talked about President Jefferson Davis. He's going to be the president of the South, the president of the rebels, the president of the CSA. All the same thing. Then we have Robert E. Lee. He's going to be the main position, or the main leader for the South. When he is defeated at the Battle of Gettysburg, he offers to resign, but Jefferson Davis isn't stupid. He's like, you're my best general. There's no way I'm letting you go just because you lost one battle. Braxton Bragg, not going to talk about him. General Thomas Jackson, you guys may know him as Stonewall Jackson or Old Blue Light, because apparently his eyes are really blue. He is literally, it's Robert E. Lee and then Stonewall Jackson. Jackson dies in 1863, 2 years into the war, mainly because he's going to be shot in the arm by his own soldiers, total accident, but with they amputate his arm, he's going to die from, obviously, the wound and infection from that. And it wasn't like one of those things that he died quickly. It took a little while. But Stonewall Jackson, because he refuses to back away from the enemy. Nathan Bedford Forrest, not going to talk about him, but if you've watched Forrest Gump, this is who they're talking about. He's often credited with starting the KKK. That's the Ku Klux Klan. And he will be kind of this famous general in some of the Southern battles. So we already talked about Fort Sumter, and you already were supposed to read that. So we're going to move on. That's just a picture of Fort Sumter. Another picture firing on Fort Sumter, kind of out there in the middle of the water. The raising of the Confederate flag. The first battle of Bull Run, you also were supposed to read about that, so skipping there. This is in 1861, Western Virginia, right here. Where is West Virginia today? They are going to liberate, because honestly, the mountain people, most of them don't own slaves. It's a very mountainous area. So they're like small-time farmers and things like that. So for them to be part of Virginia, they just didn't identify as being these plantation owners in the South. Just a couple pictures of West Virginia. You're welcome. The main strategy of the Union during the American Civil War was, number one, stop or blockade the cotton shipped from the South and prevent any supplies from coming in. So you have people who are blockade runners. I believe in Gone with the Wind, Brett Butler, one of his things was he was a blockade runner. He would get supplies in and out of the South. But we successfully are able to slow down how much money and how much supplies are coming in. The other big thing is take control of the Mississippi River, which essentially will cut off the South from Texas and isolates that area. Plus, it gives us a main highway to these different southern areas to fight battles. And then, of course, to protect Washington, D.C. And with the American Civil War, and with any war, it's really an idea of capture the flag. We want to capture Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the Confederate States of America, and they want to capture Washington, D.C. So it is capture the flag. 1862, not a great year for the Union. This is a little slideshow I put together with questions. We're going to move on. Merrimack versus Monitor. Really, this is a picture of the Monitor. This is the North. It's an ironclad ship. It just very low to the water. Looks a little bit like a submarine, but it's not a submarine. It was able to keep the Merrimack from harming any other Union ships after firing for 3 hours. The fate of the Merrimack is eventually run ashore, and it's blown up. So that was like the big famous naval battle. Most of the fighting's going to be on land, to be honest. Once again, there's another picture. You can see that how the Merrimack, how the Monitor is pretty low to the ground, and the Merrimack's a little bit higher in the background there. We're going to skip the western area because, like I said, Battle of New Orleans, that's important. Once you capture New Orleans, you capture the mouth of the Mississippi River, and you can actually cut off trade to the south. So that's actually a very big deal, and the United States will do that. So you got to keep moving. Second Battle of Bull Run, yes, they have the exact same battle, or they have the same battle in the same area. It's still going to be a Confederate victory. So we're going to stop there, and I'm going to really get into just Battle of Gettysburg to Appomattox Courthouse, and that's it. Done.